Good evening. My name is Herbert Holgate. I'm with the Branch of Natural Resource from Eastern Navajo Agency, Crown Point. And tonight, our presentation on the Eastern Navajo Livestock Grazing Environmental Assessment with the FONSI. The ENA, Branch of Natural Resource, is the oversight which provides direction and guidance for planning, management, conservation development, and primarily for the responsibility of soil, water, farmland, range, fish, wildlife, and threatened endangered species ensure the compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, for approving grazing permits. Anytime a grazing permit or some is approved by the government, it's a federal action. Therefore, any federal action made has to have a FONSI or a NEPA document in place to go forward with it. And authorities, people say in Navajo, no. These are the people that say that, these are the reasons that we go by. Anything that's out there, the regulations and authorities that apply to them. The same goes with our, our grazing programs. The American Indian Agricultural Resource Management Act of 1993, as amended, dictates that, and then the code 25 CFR Code of Federal Regulations 162 leasings, 166 grazing permit for Eastern Navajo Agency in the rest of the country, as well as 167 for the Navajo Nation grazing regulations. And then, of course, the Navajo Nation Title 3 Code, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species. And then on the National Environmental Policy, NEPA, and the Quality of an EQ, Council of Environmental Quality. Okay. Next one. Some of on the presentation, you'll be observe the effective areas that we are primarily why these mitigations are brought about upon it is because of the Menifee formation. We'll talk about it throughout the presentation. And then there's some areas of concern that we'll call the Agency Protection Agency Project, which I will also talk to you about it too as well. And then the programmatic approach of environmental protection, conservation measures, enhanced grazing permit process. Okay. And then here, this is what Eastern Navajo Agency encompasses with them to the acres and in the District 15, which is on a Navajo reservation site with utilizing the 25 CFR 167 grazing regulations. And then District 16, 19, 20 is complete off reservation grazing, which is under 165, 25 CFR 166 grazing regulation. And then we have Tuajile and Alamo, which are not under any grazing yet. However, we also have some grazing allotments up in the BLM section. Counselor, Hawkes, Kimbito, and Largo. Those are under BLM grazing allotments. They're in the area that you see here within the Eastern Navajo Agency area affected by the Menifee Formation, as you see, primarily on the as you look at it on the Chaco Mesa, on the south section on the south side of the sunny side of Chaco Mesa, and down that corridor all the way towards uh San Juan River, and more or less kind of likes to follow the watershed, the San Juan water watershed. However, but there's a continental divide that goes right through Sand Springs, White Horse Lake in the area too. So anyway, that's a formation that we be talking about, and then how it developed and what it entails with that. Okay, these are the areas that we saw on the map affected by the Menifee Formation. In District 15, the three grazing community: White Rock, Nodishki, Standing Rock, and then a portion of District 16, Church Rock, Rock Springs, okay, and then Hawkback in District 19, and then District 20, it would be Santee Castillo, Lake Valley, Little Water, Papa Pintado, Sand Springs, Star Lake, White Horse Lake, and then you can pretty much see 200 grazing units as well, and then the acres, almost 500,000 acres on there. Anguishi. And then the environmental assessment findings, these are some areas that were observed and then should be emphasized. And that's why you say that. And there's some areas that are considered to be very sensitive area. And then within the grazing leased areas. And then upon that, we'll implement effective planning based upon the results of the EA. And these protective agency projects are areas like let's say there's some an eagle nest that's observed, and the area will be observed, or culture resource spot which is observed, and then those areas will be fenced off or not visited during a certain time of the year. Those are protective areas, and then some of the sensitive area including that are the culture sites, like maybe there's some ruins or our own places like some touch chase out there. Those are some sites that are considered are places where our kinfolks do offerings, and those are areas are like dot site, anime way ceremony sites, or wherever there's culture sites that are done. And then the other part to that is the threatened endangered species with the the plants and the birds or other species, that animal species, and then also some water resources like some areas you can see a pond, natural springs. Those are some areas that are very sensitive that should be considered. Okay. And then, like I said, in these APAP design areas, we will see, we'll need, identify where they're at, and then funding is provided. Those areas will be left alone, you know, to protect the resources there that's on the rangeland. Maintain a programmatic approach to environmental protection. In your conservation plan, you'll have measures that that will be addressed of the threatened and endangered species in there, and then what you should do with them there. It's actually spelled out and defined, and then the producer understands that, and then when they do their conservation plan, it's determined what areas of their range unit are considered, and then approve conservation plan. You'll have your on that you'll know what your field, your country is like, your grazing unit is like, and you'll have an inventory of what's out there, and then based upon that, uh, as a producer and with the help of our staff, we'll do update monitoring of the range unit, and then update what where you are on your conservation plan, on your conservation project, for improving that. And then this is all pretty much within the 10-year project, within 10-year grazing permit span. Continue with the findings, and then establish new grazing permit or lease authorization process. Consider identify environmental concerns and issues. And I will address that a little further down on when those are identified again. And then implement enhanced protection approach for approving grazing permit. Why we're very sensitive when we just don't approve grazing permit outright. A better inventory and studies are considered for these leases are approved. And then continue to promote the best practice management you could do to mitigate through the EA that's mentioned on there in your conservation plan. And then you continue to practice your conservation measures. In there, you'll identify what you're going to do, and then based upon that, throughout the time, you'll address them accordingly to your schedule, how you want to improve your projects. And then as you identify areas some sensitive areas that maybe there's a discovery of maybe some threatened endangered plant that's grown out there, identified, or a cultural resource that's identified on there. And then the survey will be done to determine after that, the APAC will be considered for the termination of the area of concern. And then further on within the section 106, there's an MOU, entitled that clearance for grazing and leasing and herding improvement. The MOU outlines the steps necessary to preserve the cultural resource and not in the historic preservation section 106 and guidance for grazing permit issues and withdrawal and modification. And that there's several I'd say uh how do you call them several authorities in there that oversees these permit issuance. It's not only from 25 CFRs, but it's also from these section 106 guidance as well. Okay. These are some necessary to preserve cultural resources, including when a new grazing permit or a permit created, no archaeological clearance is needed. Okay. And that's identified in the EA. The EA gives the instructions that these are needed and these are not needed. When a grazing lease is renewed or transferred, permit re-signed, no archaeological survey is needed. And then like instructions about animal sheds, corrals, gates, water troughs, corrals, no clearance are needed, art clearance are needed. Fencing project require an art clearance before any ground disturbance, like when we run a fence line or before you bring heavy equipment across the country on your range unit. Consideration for archaeological survey has to be completed. We don't know what's underneath unless archaeologists walk the area. And then fencing projects with by one of our fellow Navajos without federal participation requires permission from the appropriate land board. Any kind of range improvement that's coming forth has to be acknowledged by the land board for their acknowledgement. So therefore, there's no dispute or whatever going to happen on those areas. And then any changes in acres, location, scope will require to be reevaluated, like a range land addition or allotment addition to the unit. All right. When a new grazing permit, okay, there is no adverse. Okay, continue on with that with this. We're done with this one. Go ahead, next one. There is no adverse impact on public health and safety. Okay, mitigation potential socioeconomic and environmental justice impact by implementing the measures, and we'll talk about that further down the road on these two issues too. Go ahead. Implement mitigation measures to prevent impact to flood and wetlands are preserved and conservation plans. Like if there's within your range unit, there's a floodplain or any kind of wetland, observations should be considered within your conservation plans how to protect those areas as well. Because wetlands, the potential of wildlife habitat as well as the floodplains, for the constant change of the land formation in those areas. And then none of the less than significant impact would contribute to cumulative impact in the region. Okay. And then provide an enhanced grazing permitting process that preserves livestock grazing, such as integral aspect of traditional level culture, lifestyle, and economy for the project or area residents. New information reveals may affect listed species in a manner or extended like let's say there's another species that's listed on in threatened endangered species will also be reminded and put into the conservation plan as well as the EA again, and then the fund will reflect those information as well. The proposed actions subsequently modified include activities which are not considered during the consultation or considered obligation under Section 7 when new species are listed or critical habitat is designed may be affected. Like I was saying, if there's another addition to the list, that those will be designated as well. In the EA proposed action, one of the as you read through it, and then from there, due to what the range land inventories have provided to us that we did from 2003 to 2014, that there needs to be an adjustment because of the continuous drought, prolonged drought, that compared to what was allocated at 100%, it was determined that in order for the land to recover and to prevent further damage, permits will be issued at 75% of the carrying capacity. And then this is in effect right now, and we'll be doing it again. An enhanced grazing permit approval process. That's that's how it's done. And then the guidance, the authoritative on there, the NEPA policy, Navajo Nation Title III, Navajo Nation, and then our 25 CFR subpart B, C, and D. Okay, and then prior to determine a permit is going to be forthcoming, as it for its availability is determined. Staff professionals go out there and conduct these of availability of the forage, and then thereafter they move forward onto with the land board members to inform them of their request for land board action. Based upon that, the carrying capacity is determined, and then client referrals are made, and then that's the process of the grazing permit issuance. Thereafter, recommendations, and then the environmental concerns. These are some areas that have been identified, like any kind of an area of concerns, like issuing a grazing permit for the number of years it's been out here. A concern has been brought about because of the overstocking or overgrazing, or the current drought mitigation is still out there, and then therefore adjustments to what needs to happen has to be done. Like I said, 75% carrying capacity is applied into these measures. And then from there on, the culture resources are identified, and then addresses the APAP, the Agency Protection Agency Plan. Those are applied, and then from there on, ground surveys are done with Navajo HPD. Implement mitigation measures, identify potential and socioeconomic and social justice. Those are done, the impact on how grazing will impact the socioeconomic of the area, and then the environmental justice, identify impacts. Those are some areas that identify mechanism in place of unreasonable properties or reductions. Socioeconomic impact, that's the impact of how will grazing impact, your the factors are like the income, education, demographic factors, race, ethnicity. Those are some economical factors. And then from there on, it leads into the environmental factors. How is grazing affecting the socioeconomic impact? And then social responsibility, economically feasible, and the individual factors. Having a great approved grazing permit under the proposed action. And it's pretty much these economic, social economic impact is pretty much a stable situation where people have adapted to it long enough to coexist with the grazing. So that those are some factors that are considered with these EAs when they're being done. Okay. The results and the results, out here, considering what's out there, unemployment rate, and then the demand for existing workforce, like a lot of, as you see out there, folks don't tend to livestock as they used to before. And therefore, the demand for workforce for sheep herders are considered as a local example, and cause of lifestyle, culture values, and those are some areas that we are kind of drifting away from it. However, livestock grazing is always going to be there for long term, right? Environmental justice, is how will the grazing permit affect the environmental justice identified? The carrying capacities has played a role, and then adjustment in these areas has played a role, and then also with withdrawing some high sensitive areas where there's possibly not much forage out there, or just a bunch of mesas with rock outcrop. Those are withdrawn, and then within the grazing unit where the carrying capacity is very, very, very low, and then new grazing lands would be impacted. Okay, and then like an addition to your land would be some of the authority to grant land nearby to make up for some areas that you need, and then new grazing land. Not then there's always concern for additional grazing land. There's not much land out there to graze, and it's very, very, very tough to actually uh, get additional land within your own grazing community. You have to go outsource, maybe uh, lease other areas. That's how far you want to go. There's some areas you have to consider, and then these are the issues that we to visit with the permittees on, and then during the permittee orientation that we address these issues that are concern them, and then take it from there on. All right, assist in obtaining funds for range enhancement projects. You have you have a conservation plan for you have a thoughts on the conservation plan. First of all, but you have an idea, you have your goals set of how to improve your range units, pasture development, water resource development. Those are some key issues you think about. And then you also that will improve your grazing condition. And then, therefore, if you plan right, you do your pasture development to avoid uh, overgrazing. You move your animal around in a timely manner to utilize the forage completely. And then there's areas you have to consider, in the floodplain. You don't want to be in the area and those at the time of the flood season, or even those wetlands are considered. And they're protected. Those water resources, and then because of the population and homes of some of these migratory birds, and then of course, livestock grazing is an integral part of our Navajo culture and lifestyle. Anywhere we go, anytime there's a gathering, ceremony, or just a good time, people will butcher their sheep, and that's their prime cuts. Even though people say I don't eat mutton, but what costs a mutton, $200 on up, and based upon that, we're in an area where we're very culturally dependent upon. And then the potential surface waters outside grazing and downstream water. Those are some waters that go through our country, like during the monsoon, you see water through the Chaco Canyon going unharnessed, going to the San Juan River. And those are some issues and some concerns you have to consider. So make plan for ways to harvest those water and retain the water. Today you hear about the water right hearings with the Navajo Nation, and that's a start. Do some erosion control structures to retain moisture in the soil, and then go from there. Nagoshi. Conservation plan will state which practices needed to be applied to avoid, minimize, mitigate on sensitive grade areas. Rangeland improvement projects include, but not limited to, these are some areas in your conservation plan. Like I said, pasture development, which is by project, by fencing project, boundary fence, interior fence, in other areas, primarily with barbed wire exclusion fencing and water resource development. Like I was saying, you have to have water in if you're going to do this, you develop these pastures, and then within each pasture, you had to have water. Pick your ways to supply water to those pastures, like from a windmill, and then you might run some water line, and then to your drinkers, tire drinkers, or earth tanks, or whatever is going to sustain your watering resource for your cattle during the duration of your grazing there. And then the earth basin, and then you think about your spreader dikes, diversions. They were quite common years ago. I remember that. You see these long dikes, and then they were there for a purpose. Right now, a lot of those diversions have served their purpose, and new ones need to be considered erosion control structure projects. Like placing rocks in those small gullies, and then with the rock and brush structure. If you're doing those practice, eventually, you'll retain your soil from washing away. And then furthermore, if you let's given a few days rest by doing a livestock grazing rotation. Let's say you have three pastures, and then you give that pasture at least 20-day rest, whatever it takes, that all those plants will be taking all that energy from the sunlight and resting, and then revitalize itself. And then you place it as well, and then placing minerals in areas, you use those minerals and supplements in areas where livestock don't graze often. Let's say you don't place them at the water sources. You place them way out in the corners. And then when the cattle, sheep, whatever, they go out there, the herd cattle, they go out there, they know where those supplements are at, and then they'll go out there and then take their licks, and then they'll go back to the water source. So you move your salt licks and mineral placement around. Use that as a way to move your livestock around. Goshen. And then conservation measures for the minkus, milk vetch, and the mesa verde. These two species are plant species that are threatened. And then if you see these, I want to show you a picture at the end of the slide where they're at. Okay. And then if there's any of these that you see out there or being discovered out there in the Menifee Formation, like we said, and then there was one site that was identified out in the hogback. It was the Mesa Verde cactus on a range unit, and up there is identified there. In those areas that will be excluded from grazing, will be fenced off, like the APAP I was talking about, is how it's going to be applied to those. And then those plants are visible, should be coming out pretty soon, April and May. The flowering of these two species will identify what you're looking for out there. And then those are the surveying season. And then when you detect one of these species, these area within a quarter mile should be protected. And then if there's going to be a fence project going through there, relocate your fence project to away from that area, or maybe an earth tank you can be built, move away from that area. If the projects cannot be located, can't be moved to another area, exclusion fences within that area will be applied to prevent to the individual species that's identified. I'm guessing. to keep it from trampling. Okay, and then there's two birds in there, the yellow-billed cuckoo and the southwest willow flycatcher. And the yellow-billed cuckoo is threatened, and the southwest willow catcher is endangered. You know, when they say threatened, there's still a chance, that we can do some kind of measures on these. And then the southwest willow flycatchers is endangered, like how now I would say, and so then dead, that's how the size being observed. And then within our area, through there's a potential sites of the habitats that's been identified primarily in the riparian areas where there's seasonal water. Those are some washes that have been identified to be potential uh, nesting areas. These birds are migratory, and then like maybe April, May, there's when they become coming through the area, going up north, and then some days they stay and they have their eggs there, and then later on the migratory back down south, which is probably August. Those are some areas that's being observed. Those are some habitats. And again, the 1 month, the quarter-mile radius of the project is also considered in avoiding those areas. And again, here's a good indication from May 1st, September 1st, for the yellow bill cuckoo, and then the southwest willow flycatcher from April 1st to September in those areas. Primarily, like I said, in the water waterways. I'm gushing. And the culture resource, is determined Navajo Nation XPD, prevent any ground disturbance, initial process. And then if there's a project, identify the project, which is like you're going to be running the fence line, earth tank, water line, mineral placement. Those areas identified to be a culture site should be avoided. Move the fence, to move the project away from those sites. And then historical properties, culture sites. And then again, if those areas are identified, avoid and minimize or mitigation to adverse effect, leave those areas alone, I'm gushing. Okay, here's the endangered species. We was talking about the southwest willow flycatchers. That's what they look like, and the little guy there, and sitting on the barbed wire. The very small little guys that had out there, and then pretty much nothing in the area has been identified, but primarily like the San Juan River are good potential sites. I'm guessing, right? And then here's the yellow-billed cuckoo. So we said, that's threatened, what they look like. And then here's the Mesa Verde cactus that's considered to be on the threatened endangered species on the threatened list. Okay. And then go back a little bit one more time. Go back. Okay. Go back. Go back. Okay. You can see where it's identified by the flowering on top. Those are very small cactus barrel size, very small species, maybe about the size of your fists. That's how big they get. Okay. And then the next one is the Mesa Verde. Oh, excuse me. The Minkus milk vetch is what it is. They pretty much have their habitats in this kind of area, the rocky area along the sandstones, and that's where they primarily grow. They kind of remind me of the what do you call those species um that horses eat. Hold on, then. So that's what we have. And they have questions. Okay, that's pretty much uh
Okay.
ends our slide presentation.
There's okay. I'll push it back to the question chat box. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Holgate. If you guys have any questions, please insert them in the chat box, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Any questions?
Good evening. This is Marge. I have a question for Mr. Holgate. Thank you for this. It's a very educational presentation you did. I have some questions. Number one, how do you explain to our elderly what that Menifee formation? خليت if uneducated individual had شغل ينكتنا. So that's number one. Number two is some neighbors or some people don't attend like when they attend shadow نيلنا that نيلي and I noticed that you said any other development needs to go through an EA before anything is disturbed. Does that involve the road? Okay, that's number two. And then number three is deferred land or a land to be rested. And let's say an individual decided to rest the land for like 3 months or maybe a whole year. What happens to the payment that the fees that they paid? Will that be credit for the next year or something like that? The final part is the livestock emergency response. Like I know right now we're being really pushed at the chapter level. There should be emergency response for livestock. Um, I was just kind of listening out in the conservation plan. Is that part of their conservation plan, or do you already have one in place? That's what I have, and thank you.
Okay, with the Menifee formation, to explain in Navajo. Okay, this Menifee formation, tsana lately get tsana araba ka says the jage ha it's aro tsana age bits aro says in the hawilde. Says ge ha did that ege ba hawil nege makes a very cactus with a yo ka hallo dot Minkus milk veg what that what that said an age a ka I quit the in the like the where that map was showing because hal kida what that how are they we are send a big the formation what that many formation John they said send out
Uh-huh.
they get the things it on and
Yeah.
then the next ones you had on your roads
Yeah.
with roads a culture resource is required and especially out here in Eastern there's a lot of culture resources you can just walking across the country you'll see pottery shirts that indicates there's something nearby so those are uh culture resource clearance has to be completed before any ground disturbance out there. And
Okay.
then deferred grazing it's applicable if if the person wants to defer a pasture or their range unit apply it that the person has the range unit fenced up so that way that person can remove all the animal off that range unit and
Mm-hmm.
then you go through nomination land board process. You tell your board members this is what I'm going to do, and then granted your permission will be granted to defer your range unit for at least a couple of years, and then payment will be not applied then. And then after you pick up again, you'll resume your grazing again. Then the permit is applied again. And then for the livestock
Emergency response plan.
emergency response plan, that's pretty much is with the permittee and the Navajo Nation. And if a person takes care of the land after they apply their conservation plan. I mean, it sounds easy, but hard work, and I'm talking from experience. If you maintain your carrying capacity to what's provided to you on your rangeland, the forage on there will sustain your animal year round, provided that you supplement them with minerals and other supplements you provide with water. That should pretty much sustain your range unit, and the livestock should be able
Okay.
to. That's why these range studies have indicate the carrying capacity for each area. One
Mhm.
cow, this many cattle can be raised on this range unit year round. That's how it's determined. Hey, what the?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of thinking about the way, well, right now it's getting really dry, and then some areas like let's say there's a highway that goes through the pasture land, and some people are very careless. They just throw their cigarettes off out of it does wildfire. So what happened in Oklahoma, um you know, are we prepared? Um, I know we can't say expect things like that, but I guess that's what I'm kind of alluding to. Do we have an emergency response plan, like in case something happens like that? So maybe that's something that we can all think about, how we can all work together, um, put a response plan. Uh, There's 8 chapters under Danny Simpson. They're compiling um, livestock. They're compiling an emergency plan, and they're integrating livestock um, portion as well. So just heads up that we're going to list you guys as one of our response team. So that's about it. And then the final question that just popped to me is the endangered species. I know we're kind of far away from I-40 South, but there's a couple of times that Mexican gray wolf has crossed I-40 towards north, and that's from the south. And then Colorado have there are um, kind of like protecting their gray wolves. So we're kind of like right in the middle right now as far as the reservation. I think, like you said, if there's new endangered species, what are you guys' plan about this Mexican gray wolves? Like in case it starts to migrate into onto the reservation.
We have our Navajo Nation wildlife program and the historic preservation program. They'll be the because
Mhm.
they're funded with a 638, and then it's going to be coming from their uh, allocation how they would handle that. You know,
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so, well, hopefully that never comes our way that we don't want to protect that. They're as bad as mice. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Thank
well,
you, Marge.
mhm.
And
thank you,
thank you,
Mark.
Mr. Holt. Okay, so the next person that I see that's unmuted is Mr. Johnson. All right, you have the floor.
Thank you, Michaela. Thank you, Herb, for the presentation along with BIA staff. Um, I have, well, 4 questions, but I think Marge just now asked one regarding the Mexican gray wolf, so I'll lead off with that. In regards to the Endangered Species Act, when things are threatened or listed as endangered, um, will you guys make notifications to us in regards to this? Because I know, like, last month, the silver spotted butterfly was listed as a threatened species, and they affect northern New Mexico all the way up to eastern Utah and parts of southwest Colorado. And reading the Federal Register on that, it says that spotted butterfly has a habitat of 5,300 feet to all the way up to 8,300 feet. So, and my one of my grazing permits were about 6,500 feet, and we're just I would say uh, approximately 20 miles south of the listed habitat zone that the Fish and Wildlife Service has published. Will you guys be informing us if anything changes? Because I know that those maps expand exponentially once the final rule is adjusted and everything. And that's just by history. If you look at the greater lesser prairie chicken that was only listed on Texas and all that, and their latest listing showed that they were going to try to push it into eastern New Mexico. So I was just wondering if you guys going to keep us permittees informed of any kind of changes on ESAs. And like Marge said, that Mexican gray wolf, their experimental boundary is I-40 south. But like she said, there's been several wolves that have migrated north of that, and they finally removed one of those wolves back in December. Um, uh, and she said that Colorado, as you guys know, has released wolves all the way around Telluride and um, Ridgeway. And I know that they have a rule with New Mexico saying that if one of those wolves that are collared goes south onto New Mexico, that Colorado is supposed to give us notice, New Mexico notice, and supposed to remove that. I was wondering if they have the same policy with Eastern Navajo Agency if those wolves do migrate south. And that was the first question. The second question is, you listed in your presentation about the 2003 to 2014 rangeland assessment. I was wondering if you have that published as public, because that's what you're basing the 75% carrying capacity on. And in regards to that, also that socioeconomic impact statement for the EA, is that also made public for us to review? And the last question I had was regarding the Manistee formation. I know that you put a slide in there and it showed the formation and also the impacted districts. Do you guys have a more in-depth slide or information in which actual permits are going to be affected by that Manistee formation? And if so, when will we be able to look at it?
Okay. All right. With your question on the endangered species that are the Mexican gray wolves and release, we have another environmental assessment coming forth, which these information that we talk about will be updated, and then we'll go from there again. And then of course the U.S. Fish and Wildlife are the one that identifies the endangered species, the threatened endangered species to us in the nation. And then the 75% information that I provided is coming from the environmental assessment. The range inventory schedules were completed. Since they were completed, okay, since these are completed now, in order for the land to recover, we should how about issuing grazing permit at 75%? That's how it's applied from the environmental assessment. And then, of course, the range inventory studies are going to be done again to reflect the new grazing permit coming out. And then with the Manistee formation, we have identified range units throughout Eastern Navajo Agency. It's like District 15, Vicente, District 20, part of Lake Valley, on up all the way up north up to Hawkback. And though they are identified already, yeah, we can tell you within your conservation plan, we in each conservation plan we identified, put a map in there, whether your range area is in the Manistee formation or is only about several miles away from the mangrove formation. Those are identified in the conservation plans. Okay.
So Herbert, just to follow up, so you're saying that we won't know until we do the grazing permit renewal process this summer. We'll be notified of that so that we can adjust our conservation plans accordingly.
The 75% is in effect right now, and then in order if you have your range unit developed, pasture developed, boundary fence, water resource, provided that you do the forage is a is of good quality and of good cover, ground cover, the possibility to reallocate your permit at their actual range inventory studies applies. Let's say your range unit, you had a 100 hit capacity on your range unit, and then after this, with the current information we provided on open range, you'll be given a 75 head of cattle. Now, if you do your range development, fencing and pasture rotation, provided there's good forage, water resources available, a good possibility you'll get your 25% hit back to 100 cattle. It's pretty much in the hands of the producer, the operator, to do those improvements. That's why they have their goals and objective in their conservation plan. They that's their plan. They talk about it. You give an idea of what they're doing, and people that develop these conservation plans have their own information in there, and they take pride and ownership in their conservation plan because you include their ideas and their thoughts into the plan. That's heart to keep the big heart to them. This is not okay.
Okay, thanks, Herb. And also, I was just asking about that EA statement, environmental assessment for the grazing permits.
Mhm.
Is that published anywhere?
Uh, we made it available. We can provide those copies. It's a big, thick edition. Yeah, we can provide those information to you all. Yeah.
Okay. And you were saying something about the Mexican gray wolves can be environmental assessments. Is there any way that we can get that in an environmental impact statement instead of an environmental assessment? Because I know the environmental impact statement is more comprehensive, and we also allows the general public to comment and make suggestions on it rather than an EA where it's all agency driven. So
With the EA, we've done our EA as a programmatic EA at that level, which is almost an EIS, and we included public outreach. We went on the air, paper. It had various public meetings when we were doing
Uh,
our.
I'm regarding the Mexican gray wolf.
Yeah,
You stated.
that's what we did. Therefore, when the next environmental assessment is going to become done, it's going to be whatever U.S. Fish and Wildlife provide will be included in the endangered species there. So possibly those information that you have will be addressed, and that EA is becoming force again soon.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Herb, I have another question. Um, um, the part of the presentation is the conservation plan. The permittee plans cross fencing, let's say, and they didn't resort to any other services, but they did their cross fencing with 100% of their income. There's somewhere in there, like if in case they lose this permit, are they allowed to get reimbursed for what they put on the rangeland, or is that allowable? And I do understand if it's like NRCS project and they did like maybe 85% of NRCS funds and then 15% came out of the producer's pocket. But if the individual just used their own funds 100% and they lose their permit, and can they request for reimbursement on that portion because they input they developed the land and they added the value to the pasture land?
We haven't actually, how should I say, crossed any kind of issues like that prior, and then consideration to um, like if you lose your grazing permit for non-compliance, that happens, and then in order to just get yourself back in compliance, you won't lose your permit. And then primarily other stuff is that other thing is that people don't pay on their grazing permit, and then they lose their grazing permit gets canceled, and then they can go back upon it to request for reinstatement like that. Those are some ways to get back on there.
Okay, thank you. That was just a thought. Thank you.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, Marge and Dustin. Those are really good questions. Are there any more questions as related to our presentation tonight?
Michaela,
Yes, go ahead.
sorry, I have one more question, and
Sure.
just popped in the head when I heard Marge's question. Mr. Holgate, you in the your presentation also you stated that any fences that need to be um, before they're completed, they need to be art clearance and all that. I was wondering, because I know the state of New Mexico and the state land department or state land office, um, I know that to comply with their cultural resources uh, recent act, that that the state will pay for the art clearance in regards to those projects. I was wondering, um, I know that my permits don't border any state land, but are there any other grazing permits out there that border state lands? And if they are, you guys, the state land will pay for that art clearance in regards to the fencing project. Does the BIA do the similar, or do we have to pay for that art clearance ourselves?
and there was art clearance, and it's been 638 with the nation. So it's upon the nation to do those type of clearance for us. And then with other projects, it's upon the producer to have an art clearance done.
They can go through NRCS.
They go or either go through NRCS where they have their own
They get it done pretty quick.
they get it done quickly. As far
Okay.
as okay.
Okay, and in regards to that, you would you guys provide the contact information regarding that? How to get that process started?
There's a list available from the Navajo Nation's Cultural Resource Office or HPD.
Okay,
And,
but then you said that the historic preservation department will pay for that art clearance for us.
no, it's pretty much you have to visit with them and then go from there. They shorthanded as anybody else.
Okay. All right, that was my question. Thank you, though.
Okay, so is there any more questions before we go ahead and end tonight's session? I'll give you guys a moment. Okay. All right then. Well, that concludes our presentation tonight. I just want to say thank you to our main speaker tonight, which is Mr. Holgate. And thank you for those from the Natural Resource Department monitoring our chat box. You guys provide a lot of feedback as well. And let's see. I'll go ahead. And if you guys have not yet filled out our polls, I would greatly appreciate it if you have not done so. It should have popped up right when you are on your screen, and it will say the BIA webinar series EA webinar poll survey. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and stop sharing this screen. And for some reason, the screen that I want is not popping up. So I will just go ahead and talk about our events tonight. So this is a great session. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the great questions that you guys have. It kind of made me lead to some future webinars that we could have on here on our platform, such as the Mexican gray wolves. Definitely, we want to give you guys information on that, you know, of at least how many of those wolves have entered New Mexico and Arizona, and what are the protocols that you guys as ranchers have to make and have to know. So definitely that is one thing on my list to see if we can make that something like that happen. Just to let you guys know, we do have a herd health workshop coming up this Friday at Sonosti chapter. If you guys are going to be in that area, it will start at 10 a.m. and will end around about 12 p.m. Sorry. We also have record keeping as well that day. Oh, geez. Something just, the water went on the wrong pipe. We will have a herd health workshop and record keeping as well in Peclapito next week on the 20th. And our last webinar for the BIA webinar series will be on bonding requirements, and that will be on March 28th, starting at 5:30 p.m. and it's going to be a webinar. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us this evening. Definitely, if you have any questions regarding the EA, I would highly, discuss that with the folks that were on here as far as presenters, Mr. Holgate, Effie Delmar, and we also have James and Roderick Yazzie. That will be your folks to go to if you have any questions regarding the environmental assessment. And we do have a conservation planning program. And for that, if you are a producer in Eastern Agency and you would like to know more about our conservation planning program, definitely we can provide information on that, and as well as helping one-on-one with producers. If you're in need of assistance and you're in northern area, we can definitely make contact with you. I am the person that is handled more on the webinar and making resources available to you guys. And for the folks that are interested in the conservation planning program and want to set up a one-on-one session with our techs, so that will be the contact person is Ms. Shirley Toth, and her email, I can just pop it up on here. That way you guys have her information. That is her email if you are in need of assistance for a conservation plan. And here's my email if you are interested in having a workshop set up in your area, if it's livestock related or if it's garden related, definitely I can work with you to make that happen. So I just want to say thank you everyone once again for showing up on here, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. This webinar is recorded, so it will take me some time to share the information on our Facebook platform by next week. All right, then. Well, you guys all have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mikkel Silversmith. I am the NSA project coordinator, and I do have some folks on here that are joining from our team, Ms. Shailene Paul. She is one of our resource technicians that work with our producers one-on-one here in the Eastern Agency. We also have Ms. Shirley Toth, who is our project specialist, who is behind our conservation planning program platform. So for those of you that have your mic on, can I please have you mute yourselves for a moment? All right. Okay, so to carry on to who we are as a project, I just want to let everyone know that we're known as a Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project. In short, we're called the NSA Project. We're funded by the USDA Outreach and Assistance for Native Farmers and Ranchers and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers program. Here's abbreviation for this program. Don't make me say it. It's pretty lengthy, so I just say the whole USDA program out loud because that's how I remember it. We're also partnered with New Mexico State University Cooperative Extension Service, and as well as in collaboration with two of our main project partners that you see their logos all on our flyers, our sign-in sheets, our platform, and that is Dene College Land Grant Office and COPE, which stands for Community Outreach, Patient, and Empowerment. All right. So coming on to the next slide, I just want to share with you guys what NSA main goals are. We are here to help producers with resources that help them improve their operations, both profitability and sustainability. And how we do that is we deliver workshops based on the evaluations we gather from each of our webinars, from each of our in-person workshops, in our involvement with producers both in Northern and Eastern Agency. So we get a lot of feedback. We get a lot of information from producers on what they want to see as far as workshop goes. Currently, we did have a bull selection webinar that took place a couple weeks ago by one of our specialists coming from New Mexico State University, Dr. Ward. She is our livestock specialist. We also are having here in a couple more days a herd health workshop with record keeping, and that's going to be provided by the NSA project as well as the Dene College Land Grant Office. We did provide sheep and goat vaccination workshop in Gari Ahe. We did provide cattle marketing in certain areas in Northern Agency. So a lot of involvement here in the Northern Agency side, but definitely we would like to touch base in Eastern Agency and work with land boards and grazing officials to see if we can work some out to provide resources for our producers here in Eastern. So that's what we do. We provide specialists to assist us in developing, agriculture related workshops for our producers. And after our webinar tonight, I'll be happy to share with you some of our month's activities that we have in plan. Another goal of ours is that we increase our producers' knowledge in USDA programs. I'm sure you guys are all well aware of the USDA programs that are offered here in both Eastern and Northern side. Most of you may know NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Services, Farm Service Agency, Rural Development, and Risk Management Agency. So those are a couple of agencies that we are working, well, mainly with FSA programs, but we can point you in the right direction and who you can talk to as far as USDA directory. And services of those of other resource providers. When I say resource providers, I am talking about Navajo Nation Department of Agriculture and their Agriculture Infrastructure Fund program. So if you are in need of assistance on how to complete those, we'll be happy to assist you in that. And lastly, we do have our last goal is to help increase local fresh food production in areas that we serve. That is including McKinley, San Juan, and Cibolo counties. We do a lot of gardening projects. We have used the expertise of COPE, Land Grant Office, NMSU, specialists, and so forth. You probably were on here a couple weeks in last year's webinars where we had Miss Palmer from COPE deliver food preservation, gardening, planning, and seed selection. We had one of the folks coming from the land grant office touch base on hoop house and garden soil amendments and spring vegetable gardening that got a lot of views. And that was from our very own specialist coming from NMSU, Dr. Walker. So currently, we're providing a lot of insight on gardening in person, mostly held in the eastern side of things. But definitely, we would like to expand our horizons to establish garden projects in schools, hopefully senior centers and family gardens. So